Grandma,
Yes,
how does it feel to be almost 95?
no different than when I was almost 5.
No difference.
No different.
Really?
I don't know, honey. How does it feel? It's, you just, the days just mount up, I don't know. Don't ask me. I don't know, honey.
I am asking you. You're the oldest and wisest in the family.
You're the one who's turning 95. There's nobody else to ask.
Well, let's see. I don't. I don't know. People ask me what my secret is, and I say it's because I have 4 wonderful children and all these great grandchildren and great grandchildren, and that's the secret of my success.
Okay.
And Grandma, who's your favorite granddaughter?
Does she have to be my granddaughter? Can she be somebody else's granddaughter?
No, it's gotta be yours.
Oh, your
She
granddaughter.
could be anyone in the whole entire world.
Let's see. Ivanka Trump. Is
What?
Your favorite granddaughter.
Oh my God! Now I have to
Who's
edit
your
this.
favorite grandchild?
Don't ask me that.
We all know who it is.
My favorite grandchild?
Uh-huh.
They're all my favorite grandchildren.
All right.
Look at those smiling faces. So adorable. Stephanie, when you were marrying Philippe, wasn't that one of your stipulations that you come out to the West Coast every year?
We probably talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the smartest thing you ever did, honey.
More than marrying him was the condition.
I don't
What did
know
you
if
say,
it's
more
the
than what?
smartest thing she ever did, but it was a smart thing to do.
Say that again?
It may not have been the smartest thing she's ever done.
I think it's the smartest. She hasn't done many smart things. in her
Really?
life.
Going to college and
No, anybody can do that. That's no big deal. Stop filming me. Come on.
I'm not going to stop filming you.
Okay, all right.
Grandma, let me ask you some questions.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
In your 95 years, what is your top sexual advice?
Not advice, it's just a bit of knowledge that I have. Is that it doesn't necessarily wane as you get older. It depends on the people.
oh, that's so good to know.
Don't you love her?
That is so good to know. Do you remember the advice that you gave Bob and I when we were having trouble getting
I
pregnant?
do.
Oh, the back. Yeah.
Yes, but you used a Yiddish term for it,
Yeah, the hunt,
which means
like a dog.
like a dog.
On the back. Yeah, my mother's. I told Aunt Ann that, Aunt Ann Michael Burney, because she was having trouble. Yeah.
Is that hysterical?
It helped Bob and I.
like a
That's
dog.
why we have Jack.
Having sex
That's how you had
from
Jack.
behind,
Yes.
like a dog.
Really?
We've been
Or the
trying.
guy
We've
is
been trying
behind
for
you.
7 months, and then you gave us that advice,
Oh, really?
and right away I was pregnant with Jack.
Charlotte, what do you think about hearing that advice?
And then you can go like this and like stop.
Bye. Okay.
You just had sexual advice from your 95-year-old.
Thanks, Grandma.
More than the beach.
No.
They love both. They love both.
Okay, Grandma, you've had 2 marriages. They both lasted a long time. You had 2 marriages, and they both lasted quite a long time.
Yes, it did.
What are some things that you learned about how to make a relationship work?
Well, I have always felt, and I have told my children that when they were getting married or something, if both of you, both people in a marriage try their damnedest to make the other one happy, then it's going to be good. I don't know, that seems, yeah. But you know what? You have to really have a deep love, which is what I had with you, Grandpa Roy. Really. I mean, that's why the sex was so good till the end.
Right? You get
No,
it.
really, because it was so intense because we both really loved each other. It wasn't puppy love that had evolved, you know. It was mature love, and it was lovely love. That's all I can tell you. That's all I'm going to tell you.
That was a lot.
Like my toes.
More than you wanted to know, huh?
No. Any regrets, Grandma, in your 95 years?
Pardon me?
Any regrets in your 95 years?
Yeah, I wish I would have learned to swim and bike ride so I could have done those things with my kids, which I didn't. And I was always sorry. I always was like I didn't want to go up in the Empire State Building. We were in New York because I was afraid of heights. And so I stayed down in the car, put a paper bag over my head so I wouldn't see the light because I was having a migraine. And I stayed there until your grandfather and the kids came down. And then I always felt like I was shortchanging them.
Oh, yeah, joking.
And shortchanging yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
What are you the most proud of?
Pardon
I'm
me?
sorry, you're doing the interview.
No, go, Lisa.
What are you the most proud of?
I'm proud of the kind of mother I was. Yeah, and still am. I hope I'm the kind of mother my kids. I was the kind of mother they needed, and I hope I'm still the kind of mother they need. But so often I'm talking with you kids, and then later on that evening I'm going over it in my mind, and I'm thinking, I didn't react the way you would have liked me to react. Why didn't I?
Yeah.
Because we're human? I think we all feel that way.
Yeah, you know what?
If I actually walk. Okay, here, wait. Like, just walk? Yeah, like I'm. Okay, right here.
You know, I tried to take swimming lessons 5 years ago. No, 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
I didn't know that.
I took lessons. I was going to surprise all of you on my 93rd birthday and be swimming your 91st birthday. And it was too hard to get down into the pool and get out, so I gave it up.
You know what, Graham?
But, honey,
You might feel like you weren't brave enough to do those things, swim, but you have shown bravery in a lot of other ways in your life.
I don't know how, honey. I just done what I had to do at the time.
That takes bravery. There's some people that can't do
We've
that.
all done that, honey. We've all done it. You know what? We're a family of strong women. All of us. And your girls are going to be the same.
They already are.
Yeah.
Grandma, what's it been like for you watching your grandchildren not all of us, but many of us end up in relationships with non-Jewish people? What's that been like for you?
No, it's fine. I trust all of you to make the right choices. And for the most part, it's worked out.
Wait, let's try to hear what each
You know,
other
it
says.
doesn't matter. Really, it doesn't matter if you're Jewish or not Jewish. If you're a decent kind of person, that's enough. I wish that
My name's Rachel. I said I love apples.
I wish that I
Yes,
had
now
still
your
more
turn,
of a love for Judaism in all of my children and in my grandchildren. The feeling that I have, because I don't want
Oh!
the kids to forget, because being Jewish to me was always
Let me say something.
like a gift that was given to me, and I didn't even ask for it. And
Say that again.
I don't know. I just,
I
you know,
heard
it's
I
when I go to Debbie's
I
on
have
a
a fresh
Friday night, I even forget to light. At home, I never forget
Yeah,
to
I
light
know.
the candles.
Alright, now your
When I'm
turn.
at Debbie's on a Friday night, I forget which night it is, and then I go home and I think I didn't light the candles. But
Say it again.
to me, that's an important thing. And Beth always would say,
I
"Hey,
like
this
the
is so
beat.
nice. Why do I
Yeah,
do this?" And I would say, "Just do it. You know, just remember to do it." So, and I know lots of times I don't light the candles till way after candle lighting time. But if I'm not home, I don't. And I asked a rabbi about it once, and he said it's a sin to light the candles after the specified candle lighting time. But I don't care because I really need to light the candles.
So what does Shabbat symbolize to you?
It's a time for reflection on the week that's passed, and to think about the weeks that are coming, And I always ask for the same thing. I always ask for peace of mind and joy for my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And Roy B. Darling goes, I love you, I'll never stop loving you, Mama and Daddy and Ruthie and Annie and my Uncle Sachna and my Bubby and stop it.
Grandma, will you take your glasses off so I can see your eyes? Is it too bright for you?
I'm just gonna be
Look at those amazing blue eyes.
I know, that's why I want to see. Tell me about your mom.
My mother was a typical Yiddish mama. She was European always. She never learned to write. She wrote her name, was all she did. She could write Lena Arnold. And she never spoke English. We always spoke Yiddish to her, and she was 72 when she died. We would speak Yiddish to my mother and English to my father most of the time because he spoke English. But she didn't. And she was so nurturing and so compassionate. And when, in the wintertime when we kids, because we lived in Cleveland, it was cold. In the wintertime, we would come home for lunch, the three of us, because that's what kids did. And our hands would be frozen, and she would take our mittens off and put our hands under her armpits to warm them up.
That's actually the perfect place to put them to warm them up.
Yeah, it was such a loving thing to do, you know. And she was just, I don't know, I always wanted to be the kind of mother she was. My father was a little judgmental because he was worried about my relationship with your grandpa, Al. And so he would kind of bug me about it. But she never did. One thing she did say to me before we were married, she used to say, "Mein Kind, hat a Teufel in him." My child, he has a devil in him.
About Papa?
Grandpa Al, yeah. And I don't know, he never did anything, as far as I know, to provoke them or to belittle them. As a matter of fact, he said he's told somebody that one of the reasons he fell in love with me was of my family, because he didn't have much of a family life.
And what about Grandma? I'm going to stand up but I still sit down here. I know your mom had mental health
Yeah.
challenges. What was that like for you?
Well, the one that I remember the most was I was 7, and she was about being ready to be taken away to the sanitarium because she had a nervous breakdown. And I remember going into our bathroom and hanging onto the towel rod right as soon as she walked in. And I'm down on my knees and saying, "Please, dear God, make Mama get better, make Mama get better, make Mama get better." And then I ran over to my friend Sylvia's house and I cried, and her mother consoled me. But it was like, there were so many nervous breakdowns, probably 5 or 6 of them. And the last one was when I was pregnant with the twins. And she never did see them. She and my father were supposed to come in January to California, and she died in January 20th. So,
Grandma, did she try and kill herself? Did you tell me that once?
yeah. Oh. Yeah, I was about, I don't know, 11, 12. I came home from school one afternoon, and my mother wasn't in the house, and she never, she didn't drive. She never lived any place. And she wasn't in the house. And I went upstairs from there, and I went up to the attic. And she was up in the attic with a wire coat hanger, trying to put it around her neck so she could hang herself or something.
Oh my God, Grandma.
Well, that explains you feeling. That explains having anxiety throughout your life, not knowing.
You know what? In all my adult life, I kept telling myself, just don't let your nerves get the best of you. Don't do to your kids what my mother did. I mean, she didn't consciously do it, but it affected us all. And now when I have anxiety problems, I have to fight. And I keep telling myself that. So. That's all. My father was wonderful to my mother. He was really, to me, he was a wonderful husband. I know that he wasn't. I know she had a lot of anxieties because of him, and that's probably why she had the nervous breakdowns. But he was, when they got married, he was 19 and she was 31. I mean, that's a huge difference.
Wow.
You know. And he married her because he wanted to come to America, so he wouldn't have to go into the Tsar's army. They were in Lithuania, and they would have to go into the Russian army. And so I think I don't think his family had money, or her family, but I think her family paid him to marry her because she wasn't pretty at all. She was short, and she had a real hump on her back, and she had a fleshy mole on the side of her nose. And she had straight hair. She wasn't pretty, and that probably plagued her all of her married life, I think.
So how does it make you feel to see how times have changed since then?
So much noise.
Beauty is
What did you say?
only. How does it make you feel to have experienced, gone through life and see how it's changed so much from that? I mean, relationships. Beauty is only skin deep, and
I look at my pictures in my yearbook, and I'm such a lovely, innocent-looking young girl, you know. And then, I was a young bride and a young mother, and I really loved raising the kids. My kids were so much fun to be with.
they are fun.
They really were great. I had problems, sometimes when your grandfather wasn't home, and I would get frustrated with them. They'd be eating dinner and giving me a hard time. I would go outside and sit on the steps on Rossbury, sit on the steps to try and calm down. We didn't have things like gyms to go to, and even if we did, we didn't have the money to go to the gyms. So that's what we did to calm ourselves. We would go sit down, and Grandpa Roy told me that when he would have troubles at home, he would go next door to Sam Schwartz, and the two of them would go out and sit in either Sam's car or Grandpa's car, and they would sit and talk. That's what they used to do.
I used to say, I have to go to the bathroom.
Exactly.
I'd go into the bathroom and shut the door and just sit there for 10 minutes.
That's what you said. Yeah. And they pound on the door and say, Mom.
Exactly. There's no privacy even with urination.
I don't think
she
times
say?
have changed.
There's no privacy even when urinating.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
It's the same now as it was
right.
then.
Yeah, I'm sure, honey. I'm sure.
Grandma, tell me about Annie and Ruthie.
Oh, God. I wrote an article about her. So read the articles I've sent you if you still have them.
Who's Annie?
There's one about Zadie, one
sisters,
about
those are her sisters.
Bobby, one about Aunt Ann. What about my cousin Hannah?
Can we hear it, though, from you?
What, honey?
I want to hear it live. Can you just tell me about what Ruthie was like?
You know what? We didn't have a really close relationship. I try to remember. There are things I don't remember, like I don't remember any Seders at my house. And we were kosher, we were Orthodox. I don't know. But Ruthie was 5 years older than I was. She was the one who taught me about wearing deodorant. And I was thinking, Ruthie she was a very gentle, thin, sort of taller than I was anyhow, thin redhead, also not pretty. She looked sort of like Betty Davis, the big eyes. That was what Ruthie looked like. And she had to find everything out by herself because she was the oldest. Mm-hmm. My mother didn't know about makeup and hair and clothes and all that. So Ruthie had to do it alone. And then she taught us. Between my sister Annie and Ruthie and me, when we were like 16, 18, we had we each had one pair of silk stockings and one bra. And if we had dates on Saturday night, because that was date night, we would come home in the afternoon, wash out our bra and our stockings, and then hang them in front of the gas fireplace to dry, so we'd have something to wear that night. Yeah, we didn't have very much. When I went to work, I made my first job, $15.75 a week, and I gave my mother and father $3 of that. For the house, we all did. We all worked, lived at home, and gave my parents money to run the household. So,
How about Annie? What can you tell us about Aunt Ann?
oh, she was always trouble. My father used to get so frustrated with her. He used to say, and Yente was her Yiddish name, Yente. And he used to say, oh, is das a Yente? Oh, is that a Yente? A Yente mit a kutash. I don't know what a kutash is, but it meant a Yente with, I think it means like a chutzpah or something. She was always the troublemaker. And she was a house cleaner. That's what she loved to do, was clean house. And so she would send me to work dusting the legs of the dining room table. And there was a Quaker lace tablecloth that came halfway down. And then the legs of the table were big, fat legs. And I used to get under there, the tablecloth would sort of hide me. And I would hide under there. But I was supposed to be dusting. And
You're the troublemaker then.
yeah.
You're the Yenti or
Ruthie
whatever.
was always, she didn't do any work in the house. She was always fragile. She used to faint a lot.
Aunt Ann?
No, Ruthie.
No.
Well, she was sick.
Huh? She was just fragile, and I don't know if that had anything to do with her getting sick or not.
Tell Charlotte about Ruthie, because she doesn't know the story, what happened with Ruthie.
About Ruthie?
How she was sick and died.
Oh. She had Hodgkin's disease. She'd been married for 2 years. She got married when she was probably 21, 22. And she had a really nice husband. And he found out, right after they got married, she started coughing a lot. And he took her to the doctor, and he was told at the time, he didn't tell us, that she had Hodgkin's disease, which in those days they didn't have any cure for. Now they do. And so she was sick for a couple of years, huh?
I said, Philippe was looking, and I said, this is so nice. He just looked down and he was smiling.
Anyhow, they never had children because her husband kept telling her it was because he was going into the army because it was almost wartime. And so they never had kids. They had an apartment on Stewart Street. She was so happy. She never dated. He was the only guy she ever dated. Like Uncle Bernie was the only one Aunt Ann ever dated. Anyhow, so, and I was in some southern state at an Army airport camp with your grandfather who was in the service. And she got sick, and I guess I got a letter. Nobody called in those days because nobody could afford telephone calls. I got a letter from home saying that Ruthie was really sick. And so I remember taking the train home, and my Uncle Louis, my cousin Chana's father, met Chana and me. Something happened with the train. We had to get off in Akron, which was about 30 miles from Cleveland. And Uncle Louis picked us up. And Ruthie went into a coma right after I got home. And she died. She was up in I think in my parents' bedroom. And the family would go up to be with her. She was in the coma, and then my cousin Nelson, who was Hannah's brother, he was a ophthalmologist, but we figured he was a doctor. So I guess my parents asked him to come over, and he said the best thing to do would be to put her, sedate her. And so I think that's why she was in a coma. I think he sedated her too much. And then she died.
Did you get to,
Huh?
you said it happened right after you got home. Did you get to?
Yeah, it would happen.
Talk to
Yeah, I
her or
got home
see
in
her?
time. Yeah, I did. And I remember when the people from the funeral home came, and we lived in a 2-story house, or else it was the upstairs. Anyhow, I remember the sound of the basket or whatever they were carrying him and going down the stairs, hitting the sides of the wall, you know.
Ugh.
And, you know, my parents survived. I don't know how, because my mother really was so fragile. But that's all.
That
And
had to
I
have been
remember,
incredibly difficult for your parents.
Oh my God.
well, before she died, or her husband wanted, you know, not to let her know that she was dying. And so he told her that they were going to go to a camp, which the young Jewish people used to go to, called Camp Annisfield, and she needed some clothes. And so I went downtown and I bought her, my parents paid for it, or he paid for it, you know, summer clothes. And she never got to wear them, and then I wore them afterwards. Yeah. And what else do you want to know? I don't know.
I love this.
Yeah. I don't know if Charlotte needs to be hearing all these gruesome things.
No, we
Oh,
do.
about
I need
life?
to.
Of course.
Remember how we were talking the other day about the Dia de los Muertos? Is that what
Which
it's
is
called?
like the Day of the Dead, and then
Like a what?
the Day of the Dead.
Yeah.
And you like tell a bunch of stories.
Yeah,
we
you know
need
what
to know these stories because these are our relatives too.
Yeah. Well, you'll get a lot from reading my articles because I went into a lot of stuff. I don't know whether I should continue my memoirs or not.
Yes, why not?
Well, I've written what I remember from growing up, but there's things like, to tell you, I don't know, that I loved school. My happiest times were in school. Another regret that I have, but it's not really a regret, getting married so young and not going to college. That to this day, and I'm almost 95, I feel inferior when I'm around people my age, who have been to college, women, and who have had professions. So it's never left me. I should have gone, but I just wanted to get married. All I wanted to do was get married and be Al's wife. So that's what I did.
So you wanted to be a housewife.
What, honey?
You wanted to do that. Did you want to be a housewife?
I didn't call it a housewife. I just wanted to be Al's wife. I don't know.
But that's what you chose, Grandma.
Yeah.
So that's
that
what
was
you
the
wanted to be.
profession
You know what?
chose.
I still, I'm very domestic, and I don't know if it's because I never went to college, but I have a lot of other interests. But I really am happiest in my apartment, puttering around. When I get nervous, I bake. You know, so I'm really, the women that I'm friends with at home think I'm crazy because I'm shopping and baking. But, you know, I'm doing it for myself, really, because I need to do it.
That's
So,
what makes
except
you
it's
happy.
getting harder and harder. Stephanie, I brought you a Tupperware thing.
Good. I saw it. I didn't open it yet, but
Yeah,
of
so,
cookies, yeah.
Yeah, it's not. What are the cookies you like? The ginger cookies.
Okay, it's
They're
okay.
too hard. I have to stand and.
She likes the
whole
Hamantaschen too.
Yeah.
Charlotte likes Hamantaschen too.
I didn't make Hamantaschen either because it's not the time of the year. But when we make Hamantaschen, Debbie really does most of it.
Let me change positions
I
with you,
give her the
Charlotte.
recipe,
Come on,
and I hand her the ingredients, and she mixes it up in my roasting pan, and then she forms them while I'm brushing the tops with egg and making sure that the cookie sheets go in the oven and out of the oven in time. So
We need to learn how to make Hamantaschen.
That's what I wanted to film this weekend. But anyways, this is amazing what I'm filming right now.
God.
Grandma, talk to me about when you moved for Papa to go into the service and then how he left and you were by yourself during that time. Talk to me about that period.
Well, before we got married, he was going to college. It was his second year, I think, and the recruiter came from the Air Corps to the college, and they told the guys in the engineering school that they would defer them until after they got out of college. They wouldn't have to go into the Army. And 2 months later, he got a call to go, and we had been married just a few months. documents. Yeah, I think so. And so he left. Uncle Bernie left in February for the army, and then your grandfather left in April. Went to Miami Beach for basic training, and I didn't go there. But then he went to Clemson, South Carolina, which was a lovely little town at the time. And I took the train. I had never been on a train in my life. I had never been more than 30 miles outside of Cleveland. And look at the way you kids travel all over Paris, London. Yeah. I remember the train was so crowded because it had a lot of servicemen on it that a lot of us women spent the 2 days that it took to get to South Carolina sitting on our suitcases in the ladies' room. That's how we traveled.
Wow, it was that
Yeah.
crowded.
Yeah, and so he met the train in Greenville, South Carolina, and then I guess we took a bus to Clemson, and we were in each base 5 weeks, and wherever we were, I always got a job. And so at Clemson, I remember going into a haberdashery and asking for a job, and the man said to me, "Is it true you're only 14? But we were all young. We were old.
Could you explain what a haberdashery was?
Haberdashery's a men's, don't know?
I think I do.
It's a men's store,
clothing store.
clothing store, yeah, where they have, men's shirts, ties, everything,
Hats.
hats, yeah. And I finally, I got a job with it was, what do they call it? Clemson University, Clemson College. I got a job in the textile department cutting stencils because I could type. Do you know what a stencil is?
No.
It's on a typewriter. You have a sheet of paper, and it's 2 sheets of paper, and in between the 2 of them is carbon paper.
Yes.
You know about carbon paper?
Yes.
And so you type it up, and then you run it on the mimeograph machine. You stand there and you keep cranking, and the copies come out. And so I did that in Clemson. And while I was with the textile department, I bought some fabric, and I handmade a pinafore, hand-stitched, the whole thing. The woman I was living with a really nice, I thought they were older, they were probably 50, man and woman, Mr. and Mrs. Lewis. And when I first moved in with them, I had one bedroom. People were renting out rooms for the servicemen's wives. She told me when I first came in, she said she wasn't going to be responsible for breakfast for me. I shouldn't count on her for breakfast. But after about 2 days, she started making breakfast for me. She was really nice. And so I made myself a pinafore and a yellow terry cloth beach robe. They were terrible.
It's so
And
incredible
then,
that you
I don't
remember
know.
this.
I know.
This stuff.
We went to, it was funny. Every night the men were in the college dorms, and we were all in various houses around. It was a small town then. And 7 o'clock every night, you'd hear the campanile, the bells ringing from the college, and the doors would open, and all these servicemen would run out and run to their wives wherever they were, all over. And then at 8 o'clock, I guess, back they go. It was funny. And then we were in a lot of places. We were in Maxwell Field, Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, where I lived with my cousin Sammy's wife's sister and brother-in-law. He was a dentist, and so he was a major, and he was stationed in Maxwell Field also. And so I guess Sammy told me, and so I guess I wrote them, and they said I could stay with them while your grandfather was at the base there. And so I lived with them, and that was 5 weeks. In Nashville, we bought a little house. We were there for 5 weeks, but they were
bought a house?
They were selling little cracker box houses, and we bought the furniture for it. And it was a darling little house, and it was so hot there that summer that I remember doing the laundry and sitting out on the back steps of the house watching the laundry drying in no time it would be dry. And then from Montgomery, we went to Lafayette, Louisiana, where I lived with a Cajun family, a man and woman, Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins. She was a lot older than he was. She was very skinny and very ugly. And they had a beautiful little girl named Mary Alice, who was about probably a year and a half. Beautiful, healthy child. And her main diet was coffee, you know, the strong Cajun coffee, and collard greens.
Yeah.
Collard greens. Yeah, she was really cute. And there I worked at Montgomery Ward selling hats. And then we went to Blytheville, Walnut Ridge, Arkansas, where I became pregnant with Robin, with your mom. And we were all in I guess it was the enlisted men's lounge, and it was winter time, and we were playing ping pong, and somehow I lost my balance, and I fell against the pot-bellied stove. I burned my hand, and I thought the baby was going to be marred forever, but she wasn't.
Well, that's debatable.
Exactly.
Then we went to Blytheville, Arkansas, and that's where your grandfather finished his training, his flight training, and he got his commission, and we went home. We went home to Cleveland for a couple of weeks, I guess, and then he went to I stayed home. He went to Langley Field, Virginia, and from Langley he left for overseas.
Do you need help?
Maybe soon.
Okay. Okay.
We've learned so much in the last, whatever
I
it's
know.
been, 35 minutes.
I told you 95, all her marbles, huh? Crazy, isn't
What
it?
did you say?
95 and all her marbles.
No, you know, lately sometimes I have trouble remembering last names of some
Grandma,
people.
you just told us the name of someone that you lived with when you were 20. Mr. and Mrs. Lewis, or
And Jenkins. And how
Mrs. Jenkins.
she was
Where else
skinny
did I work?
yeah,
And
and ugly.
and ugly.
And
And
ugly,
she had a
yeah.
But-
daughter.
Her daughter was healthy.
They were
And you-
Cajun. They spoke French. They spoke French to the kids. And there in Lafayette, I worked for a man named Mr. Hopkins, who was, I also thought he was old at the time, but he probably wasn't. He had a land assaying business where he would figure out the worth of property, I guess it was, and he would also weigh gold. People would bring him gold nuggets, and he would weigh it. And he had a daughter who was a spinster, and I used
She was.
and I used to go with him.
Single
She
and old.
should have been married by now.
I used to go with Mr. Hopkins to Lake Charles, Louisiana. I used to drive with him to the courthouse there where he had to look up records. So I would go with him. So that's what my work was in Lafayette. So,
I have to go help Philippe now.
Okay.
and in Walnut Ridge or Blytheville. I think it was Blytheville. I lived in a hotel.
Want to continue, Chef filming?
Um,
Stand up. It's going. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, keep
Okay.
going, Grandma.
Okay, bye, honey. When I moved to Walnut Ridge, I moved into a hotel. I can't remember what it was called. Small hotel, and it was owned by a Jewish man and his wife. And there were very few Jewish people in Walnut Ridge at the time. His name was Mr. Applebaum, and I had a room in the hotel. And I bought a hot plate. I went to a store and bought a hot plate, which is like one burner, like a portable one burner. And I would make dinner. I would cook meals there, and you were not supposed to cook in your hotel room. And I used to go to the market and sneak up the stairs carrying the groceries that I had bought. And Mr. Applebaum knew all along what I was doing, and I would cook in there.
He never said anything?
He never said anything to me, no. Oh, and then when they found out I was pregnant, I was about 3 months, 2-3 months pregnant. They had a baby, and they had all this baby clothes, and they wanted to give us all this stuff. And I was all for taking it because we didn't have any money. But your grandfather did not want any used things, so I didn't take anything from them. So,
So mom had all new stuff?
huh?
Mom had all new stuff?
Yeah, her stuff was all new, yeah. And then everybody else got hand-me-downs.
How old was mom when Papa first came home?
She was 7 months old, and the next morning, we heard her calling, "Dad, Dad, Dad." And she was 7 months old. She was really smart. And so we wanted to move out of we were living with my mother. We moved in with my mother and father when your grandfather went overseas. And he was gone for the 7 months, in September to about April or May. And in the wintertime, I didn't hear from him sometimes for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And I was so worried about him because he was flying. And I remember waking up during the night and hearing my mother and father talking low, very, very softly, about what would they do with me if he should get killed, if he should not come home. And they used to worry about that a lot. And then when he came home, he came into Indianapolis, which is in Indiana. And I went shopping, and I bought a coral-colored, like a rayon or silk house coat with a zipper down the front. And when he came in, he was at Fort, I don't remember, in Indianapolis. And my mother and Aunt Ann took care of Robin, and I went to Indianapolis to meet him. And I remember when he came to the hotel room that night, he knocked on the door. I had my house coat on. It was stunning. and I opened the door, and he looked so different to me. His face was really big, I remember. It looked so big.
It had been a long time.
Well, 7 months, yeah. Yeah, and then we went home. We took the train home the next day. And then, and then we went to Columbus, Ohio, where he was at Lockburn Air Base. And we rented a house in a really bad neighborhood. And the house was all like big stones, like river stones.
Mm-hmm.
The whole front of it was the stones. And Robin was a baby, and we moved in there. And I remember there was so much stuff in the house that we got busy and took a bunch of the things down in the basement. So we lived there for about a month, and then the war was over.
Oh.
Yeah, and so we came home, lived with my mother and father, and then we wanted to live by ourselves. And so without telling them, we went down to see a housing project that had been started by Franklin Roosevelt, who was our president at the time, and it was a WPA slum clearance, because it was a slum area, but they cleared it out, part of it, and put up this, I think it was a 4-story brick building. And we had a 2-bedroom apartment there for $15.75 a month, including utilities. It was 2 bedrooms and a bathroom, but we were on the 3rd floor, and we had a little porch, and we bought an unpainted drop leaf table for the kitchen. It wasn't drop leaf. And I went to the dime store, the Woolworths, and bought decals, vegetable decals, and pasted them around the edges of the table. It was very pretty.
How do you remember that?
And we bought an Axminster rug that was really a nice rug. I don't know what I did with it, for the living room, and a drop leaf mahogany Duncan 5 table. And we had Robin's crib, and I guess we had a bed. And we lived there. Oh, and then, yeah, when we moved from there, Billy was already 3 months old.
Oh.
Yeah.
We skipped the pregnancy. We just have Billy all of a
Yeah,
sudden.
Billy just came.
Okay.
And I remember when we came home from the hospital, it was Easter. It was Easter
So
Sunday.
we're going back.
Easter Sunday, my stitches were killing me. I had to have stitches, and so they were killing me. I was in bed still, I guess. And Billy got Billy got the flu. No, Robin had the flu, and Billy was an infant. He was like a week old, and we had the bris in our apartment. And my uncle Schmitzik, my mother's brother, who was terrible, came in and took one look at Billy, and he said, "Oh yeah, Stück Mist," which means a piece of dust. He was so
Oh
ugly.
my gosh! Our Uncle Billy is so handsome.
Yeah, he's so gorgeous now. But when I used to take him out, we had buggies. We had carriages. I had a wicker buggy that I used to take him out in, and I would pull his cap down to here and pull the blanket up to here. And I had a budget of $12 a week for groceries. We had used margarine instead of butter, and who was it? Oh, and Ruth thought it was terrible that we didn't have butter. And with the margarine in those days, it came in a pliafilm sack with, it was just it looked like lard, the white shortening, with a little pellet in it that had the yellow food coloring. And you had to keep kneading the bag until the food coloring was distributed.
Oh my goodness!
My hand is
No
hurting.
secret about it. They were like, "This is what it is."
Yeah. And so when we told my parents we were moving to this apartment, my mother cried, my sister came in, she was crying, everybody was crying because they wanted us to stay in my parents' big house. They had room for us, but we didn't want to be with them anymore. So we moved out, and we would go to my mother's house every week. And when we come back, she would load us up, what a bushel, you know what a bushel basket is?
Mm-hmm.
It's a round basket.
It's
It
round
has,
on the
like,
bottom,
stays in it. Yeah, it's kind of flat on the bottom. Yeah. My mother would load it up with, I think, food for us, you know. And I
She has
really-
carried on that tradition. You cannot go to Grandma's house without leaving with more than you came in with. Always.
And it may not be food. It might be an article that
Or a
she
pair
found
of
in the
shoes.
paper, or a pair of shoes that she insists you try on.
Yeah. I remember, and then Grandpa Al went back to college. He had 2 more years of engineering school. And then he graduated when Billy was 3 months old. And I couldn't cook worth a damn when I moved in there. But your grandfather once invited his friend from school, Frank O'Patterney, to come for lunch. And I made vegetable soup. I threw the whole vegetables into the soup. And I made an apple pie that was gorgeous, really high. But when we cut into it, the pie was down here. It was all air in here, and here was the crust. You know? And so we lived there until we moved to California. That's it. I've been talking nonstop, Philippe.
You want to
It's
take?
been
You want to?
amazing.
You want to take a break, Grandma?
Do you want a beer?
Huh?
Do you want a beer?
No, I wish I could. I can't. I'm taking cannabis.
How about a martini? She needs a martini.
Why can't you have a beer
and
with?
pot go together
No,
like
I don't.
like
I
hand in
don't want to
hand.
get high because if I feel a little panic stricken, I would really get panic stricken. So I'm
That's
not gonna
okay.
do
We
it.
have a doctor
I'll be
here.
on the clock for you.
What'd you
I'll
say?
be on the clock. I'll
Well,
look
listen.
after you.
If I take the cannabis
Yeah,
at night before I go to bed, say 10 o'clock,
right.
the next day for lunch, could I have some wine?
Yeah.
And then I'm taking the
Grandma, people take 10 bong loads and then pound back a beer. I don't know what you're worried
know.
about.
We're not suggesting that you do that.
I'm 95,
You're asking, can you? Yes.
and will it affect?
Should you is another thing. No, I'm just kidding. You can.
I'm not gonna do it.
Grandma, you're
No, you can.
95.
You can.
You're
Right,
95.
because-
I think you can do pretty much anything you want. That's my
I mean, it
opinion.
depends on
I
the
can't hear you.
depends on the dose you're talking about, but it's usually something that
Well,
will.
right now I'm on 6 milligrams of THC
Uh-huh.
and 15, well, maybe 20 milligrams of CBD.
Uh-huh.
So the CBD alone wasn't doing anything.
Right.
And I have tried with the THC
Mm-hmm.
to 6 milligrams.
Do you feel loopy the next day?
I thought I felt loopy with 6, so I stopped for a couple of
Yeah.
months, and I just started again. And now I'm on these 6 milligrams.
Right.
and it's still not helping my back. So I'm just going to keep going until I either feel like I'm getting high and I'll stop.
Well, I think that if you know that you're not going to move around much,
I take it before I go to bed at night.
no, that I meant the next day, the wine that you asked. If you know that you're not going to be moving around much, it's probably fine.
Yeah, and I'm not driving
You're
anymore.
not driving.
So I'm just going to keep
Yoo-hoo.
trying. Yeah.
So I say have a half a margarita.
Oh God, that sounds good. I had a couple sips of champagne at Debbie's this morning for brunch. So,
To be continued.
Yeah, to be
what else
continued.
do you want to know?
We're to be continued because dinner's about ready. Yeah.
Don't wait too long. I'm 95 almost.